All right, let's get after it, baby.
I know. Spotify is proposing to music labels that the music labels should pay Spotify to be on the platform, and like a lot of people have rightfully, I feel like, assumed that that would mean that the more a label pays, the more promoted their artists will be, and the more likely their artists will end up on playlists and on radios and like in recommendations. And a lot of people have been like, "That's really, really fucked up."
Yeah,
And I feel like
fuck-
that is, yeah, like
Spotify already makes me feel like a bad music listener.
it really does. It
But
sucks because
I guess it makes me feel a little better than pirating, at least.
yeah.
You know, at work we've been talking about this a lot because at the store I work at, the Pandora stations we are allowed to use are very limited, and we can't add our own. So we're just stuck to the same songs over and over, and we've come up with this idea that songs should have like a shelf life. There's only a certain amount of times a song can get played, and once it hits that, it's just like erased from history. For example, Freebird, we could do without that one. Hotel California, you can throw that one in the can. Um, just about any John Denver, I'm really sick of at this point too. It's more of a personal vendetta against the music that they play at the store, but welcome to Strange Conversations, where rock and roll isn't dead. It's just locked up and hidden away in Joe Biden's basement. I'm Austin Kennie.
I'm Dylan Bennett.
And today we're going to be talking about Wasted Shirts Fungus 2, which came out last week, which would have been
Friday,
February, right? Yeah, last Friday, February 28th of 2020. And Dylan, you want to tell us about a little bit about the people who collabed on this album?
Yeah, the personnel are made up of a little duo, Ty Segall of Ty Segall fame. I'd say his name has some recognition behind it. And the other person you may not know by name, but you've probably heard of their outfit, is Brian Chippendale, who is the drummer and vocalist of Lightning Bolt. Which is a noise rock sort of metal, free jazz hybrid band that is also a duo that makes some pretty crazy, pretty aggressive, pretty loud, adventurous music. And the two of them, I guess, met up and made this little side project, which is always cool to see. It's always cool to see artists collaborating. And I mean, I have my own thoughts about the finished product, but I still do respect both of these musicians quite a lot and their discographies. They're definitely, I would say, living legends.
Before we get to our thoughts, a couple other little informational things I just wanted to get out there is the album was, I guess, just recorded at Ty's house. I got the record when it came out last Friday. It came with a little zine that's got some, crazy Ty drawn art, cool. Some information, and it was written. The album was done at Ty's house in L.A. or San Francisco, somewhere in California.
California near the coast.
In California near the coast, where the surfers like to rock.
Oh, I was gonna say that's a Ty Segall lyric.
And it came out on Famous Class Records. I'd follow them on Instagram, and it's, as far as I can tell, it's like one guy in his house who's just been like boxing and shipping out all of these records. I don't really know much more about Famous Class other than they helped distribute Wasted Shirts.
Oh, Fungus dang! They 2. Actually have some pretty good. They've got some pretty good. Dang, their artists or at least the releases that they put out are pretty solid. Huh. I've never heard of this record label. I just Googled them. Yeah.
Famous Class, right? Want to
Yeah.
list off a couple top
One of the
top
things
names.
that I really like that they put out, this compilation called Start Your Own Fucking Show Space, which is a really cool live compilation. So in Brooklyn, there is a now defunct DIY venue called Death by Audio, which was also where Death by Audio pedals were made by members of the band A Place to Bury Strangers. And the venue was also managed by members of A Place to Bury Strangers, but it closed. And the last year of its operation, they recorded all these different live shows, and then compiled them all into one compilation. And Ty is on it, Lightning Bolt's on it, the OCs are on it, A Place to Bury Strangers is on it, quite a lot of other Deerhoof. There's a ton of different bands on that compilation, and it's really solid. But I did not know that it was put out by this label, so that's super cool. I see that there's A Place to Bury Strangers single, I think, put out by them. Deerhoof, Michael Cronin, Flatworms, X-Cult. X-Cult is a super cool punk band. Zigzags, I've heard of them. Meat Bodies, Purling Hiss, I've also heard of them. Yeah, this is pretty solid lineup. That's cool. I wonder where they're based out of.
Yeah, I always love. I think it's a really underrated thing to look at people's record label. I always find so many more bands just by seeing what label an album was released on.
Yeah.
And it's a really great way to find new artists and what they're making. So yeah, check out Famous Class Records.
Oh, they put out Ty's Mr. Face EP, the one that has Drug Mugger picture on it. That's cool.
Yeah, that Face Mr. Face EP I've been eyeing. I want to get it soon, but it's a really cool song. It's like blue and red vinyl with like 3D glasses and stuff. It's a cool single.
It's a gatefold 7-inch. It's 2 vinyls. That's sick.
Yeah, I really want to get it. That's only so like $8 too.
It's $13 too. That's it. $13 for a double 7 inches. That's so cool. Yeah, the Start Your Own Fucking Show Space. That's pretty pricey. It's a triple vinyl, but it's $38. But I
feel like that's worth it. Yeah. The content.
Yeah. Oh, you can get a 3 LP colored vinyl with bonus Ty Segall live 12-inch for $53. That seems like a lot, but I don't know. Maybe that Ty Segall live 12-inch is really cool. That's pretty sick.
I feel like a segment on the show is going to be Dylan making impulse records buys.
I'm not gonna get it right now. I made the mistake of buying a record today when I told myself I wouldn't, and I received a record in the mail today. I received that automatic record in the mail today.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and my T-shirt looks pretty dope. Wear it.
Fungus 2, I really was surprised at how much I enjoyed this album. When the first 2 singles came out, I was really skeptical at first. It wasn't. I mean, I love Ty. That he's like, one of my personal favorites, and I will listen to anything he puts out. And so, when I saw he was putting out a new project, I was super stoked to hear what new sound he was trying. And from the first 2 singles, I wasn't really sold at what Wasted Shirt was and the sound that they were going for. But then when I listened to this album top to bottom last Friday, I was actually really, really interested in the sound. It's not one I would say I love, and it's not an album I'm like blown away by, but there's something really interesting about it to me. And there's one problem I have with it, is that it's something that just doesn't get loud enough, and I'm constantly like turning it up and finding new sounds the louder it gets. Like there's just some other hidden like Easter egg behind like the guitar, or like the other weird vocals just layered in all over the place. So I just think it's like a fun album to kind of like dig into the more I listen to it. But Dylan, I know you kind of didn't have a similar feeling to
Yeah, I gave it one listen all the way through. I also listened to the singles as they came out. I had the same reaction when those singles were released. They interested me, and I thought what they were doing was cool, but they weren't songs that really like hooked me. They weren't songs where I was like, I gotta get more of this. I gotta listen to this more. So I was also tentative going into like when the record came out. I gave it a listen through, and I found that it was like interesting, very cool. I liked the sound of the record. It was just very kind of harsh, like really noisy, distorted sound with some pretty intense drummings. It was what I think it was kind of what I was expecting in a way. I think there's a little less identifiable Ty Segall and a lot more identifiable Lightning Bolt in the record. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, that's kind of my biggest problem with the album is it in the sense of it as a collaboration, you definitely feel the lightning bolt sound, but you don't. There's some Ty moments, but it definitely feels more like a lightning bolt record than it does a Ty record.
Yeah, I agree. It feels to me like I bet apparently I'm reading the little blurb on Bandcamp about the making of this record, which as you get to the end you find out is written by Henry Rollins, which I think is kind of cool. Yeah, but the little blurb says that the two of them met while they were both recording, while Ty was recording First Taste and Brian Chippendale was recording Sonic Citadel, which was the Lightning Bolt album that came out last year. So they both met because they were like, I guess, both in the studio at the same time, which I think is really cool. And I think I bet that Ty, First Taste was like I think for Ty, a pretty experimental approach to a record in terms of like not using guitar and using these really distorted like synth sounds. And I bet Ty was hearing Lightning Bolt and what they were doing in the studio and was like, that's the next record I want to make. Instead of it necessarily
First Taste is also just a lot calmer too, and I feel like Wasted Shirt was a period for Ty just to really let out some like pure rage.
Really rip. Like there were definitely, I wouldn't say that I dislike this album, but I would say it's not an album that like I'm so thirsty for more. Like I cannot wait for like the next Wasted Shirt thing. Like I like hope they do more. I think this is a really interesting project, but I also think that there's a certain sense where like Lightning Bolt is a band that I think I respect artistically and admire artistically more than I love to listen to, if that makes any sense. Like I think that their ethos and their creative energy and their approach to making music is super, super cool and super, super interesting. And for me, borders almost more on like kind of performance art. But it's not music that I'm like constantly listening to and obsessing over and like needing to get more and more and more of. Because honestly, Lightning Bolt's music is so loud and so aggressive that if I listen to it a lot, it gives me a headache. like in a good way, but it gives me a headache in a headache kind of way.
What's so interesting to me is, I don't know if you'll agree with this, but something about this album really feels like a OC's album to me. I don't know why, but it's like it's an album that seems to have like a kind of whole lore behind it and has this whole. It feels like there's a mythical quest going on and like there's these weird monsters at every turn, and I don't know. I just get like this OC's John Dwyer kind of vibe at some points in the album. Specifically the song Harsho. Which is it's the fourth track on the album, and I think it's my favorite song on the album.
That was the one I liked the most too. I remember the one I liked a lot being in the middle, and I believe it was Harsho.
I think that's the best song on the album, and Purple One as well also gives me a lot of these vibes. But yeah, something about this album, I don't know why I just get those feels, and I kind of thought you were gonna like it a little bit more, so I was surprised that it didn't hook you right away.
Yeah, that's true. I think that is also a very big like Lightning Bolt thing. Like from what I've listened to of Lightning Bolt, their albums are not like concept albums, but they do have these same sort of like characters and creatures and like songs that are about sort of like these mythical kind of Dungeons and Dragons-esque things. And so I think that is something that like I honestly think that is something that influenced the OCs rather than this being influenced by the OCs. I think that that this kind of lyrical content and sort of story content is really like of Brian Chippendale's mind, because the OCs, while that was always like an influence sort of throughout their discography, I'd say it really didn't it didn't become a really heavy-handed thing until like around like Orc. Because like Orc, basically that entire album is like a Dungeons and Dragons album. And then after that, Smote Reverser and now Face Stabber, both of those have been like these very sort of like fantasy, epic, prog sort of like adventure albums. And it's not the direction that I love. I kind of get where it's coming from. It's cool, but it's like not my favorite thing. But yeah, like I think that even the OCs, I would definitely say that the OCs have been influenced by Lightning Bolt, but I think that like they have become the most popular sort of like creature rock band lately. Maybe King Giz and the Lizard Wizard as well, especially with their latest album being kind of like a thrash metal, fantasy metal kind of album. But I think like that's been Lightning Bolt's shtick since like, I mean, their first album was like 97, and like that album has some like the track listing on that album is like, you know, very sort of like creature feature tracks.
Yeah, the little zine that came with the record too. It just there's tons of little creature drawings all around. So
yeah, Brian
I think that's one of the
artists. He has done the artwork. He didn't do the artwork for this album I saw, but he's done the artwork for almost every, if not every, Lightning Bolt album, and they're all like he has this very sort of psychedelic kind of creature based style that's like super colorful and like super busy, but like really cool.
The zine is definitely done by Ty. His art, I can just tell by the art style. Ty has a very like childlike sense of art. I don't mean that in a bad way. I think it's very cool how he does art, but like it's very sporadic and it just kind of like explodes all over the page a little bit. And it looks much more like Thai art because it's not psychedelic art or anything like that. It's more scribbles and like these, you know, giant demon gods kind of emerging from the scribbles and stuff. It's really cool, but it looks more like Thai art from the Thai art that I have gathered in the past. And all your talk of like all these kind of like, I guess dungeon rock bands is what I'm gonna call them.
Yeah. This new genre
makes me really want to like make a D&D campaign based off of either focus like solely on the OCs or some other band. I think it'd be so fun to like you have the know-how more than I do, but like to pick like an OCs album, I guess, and to like do a story sort of based on the songs and stuff. And I just like maybe John Mayer would be like a demon bard who's like the villain in the end, but I think it'd be really fun to figure out a campaign like that.
Yeah, he'd be like the crazed like emperor or something, like the villainous like insane emperor. I think that
he's a rock god.
I think that it's partially that like our kind of like our current like pop culture moment has this like, I mean, I guess it's the with things like Stranger Things, even you see the things that people used to consider just like nerd culture and like kind of nerdy and like quote unquote lame. Now everything has come full circle, and I guess, I mean, really, Brian Chippendale also, I believe, is in his like 40s. John Dwyer's in his 40s. So like those guys were, I mean, they were like when they were teenagers was like, you know, the late 80s, early 90s, or maybe a little later than that. But
yeah,
they were, I mean, I'm sure they were playing like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, and even into their later years, like are clearly still into like the mythos and like the world. And I think it's cool to see how it's come to influence a lot of these like psych rock bands, because now it's not this sort of like flower power sort of like happy sort of love psych rock that is cool sort of, but also feels a little forced a lot of the times, especially like that kind of like 60s garage psych sort of sound. And like now it's all about this like heavy sort of like prog influenced, sort of like thrash metal influenced dark psych rock that a lot of times has these like Dungeons and Dragons themes.
It's so interesting because I feel like when you look back at bands like Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, who really do influence sort of Ty and John Dwyer, I think, and Brian Chippendale, I think their music is like based off Lord of the Rings, which is where D&D was like birthed
and
from.
Gollum
It's so interesting how exactly like rock and roll is just somehow intertwined with being nerds. I guess I've been actually listening to more Black Sabbath recently. They're really cool, and
it's so good.
It's just like it's like that dark like. I guess they're the first metal band, so they're like it's kind of metal, sort of in a way, but it's just like
I like that it's like actually. I think the one thing that sometimes gets lost between like Sabbath sound into more contemporary metal is that like Sabbath kind of had like they had a pretty minimal like sound. Like their playing was really good, and like especially the bass player had like these crazy bass riffs. But like in terms of like actual like production, for the most part, it was like one guitar, one drum, one bass, vocals, and like that was sort of like the structure of most of their songs. Like they didn't have these like super complicated arrangements and like super dense like instrumentation with like multiple layers of guitar and synth and like all these different things. And I think that's like really cool. I think I've never really gotten seriously into metal except for maybe some of the stuff like Lightning Bolt that's more noise than it is metal. But Black Sabbath, I've always loved Black Sabbath. Like I think it's that more minimal style of metal, and that kind of slightly groovy, I guess you could say like stoner metal. I haven't listened to a lot of stoner metal bands to really know much of what I would like in that genre, but Black Sabbath is dope. Black Sabbath is always fucking dope.
Yeah, Fungus 2 is really, I guess, the deepest into metal. I don't even know if I can call it metal because I really haven't explored the genre much, but it's the most hardcore, I guess, that I've gotten in a while and really enjoyed. And like I said, each time I turn it up, I just like keep diving deeper into songs, and like we were talking about Zeppelin earlier and how this album is so entrenched in mythos and lore, and the second track is Zeppelin 5, which is another standout track for me.
I didn't get that at first, but then I remembered in my head, I was like, I pieced together. I remember Zeppelin did 4 self-titled albums, and then they had Houses of the Holy instead of doing Zeppelin 5. Like they were like, it was like Zeppelin debut, and then Zeppelin 2, 3, and 4, which is the one that had like Stairway to Heaven, and I believe Zeppelin 4 also had. What else was on Zeppelin 4? That's like easily probably their most famous album.
It has Going to California.
Yeah. But like at first I was like Zeppelin 5, and this maybe shows that I'm not like the biggest Zeppelin like nerd. Like I'm not constantly thinking about Zeppelin. But for my first listen, I didn't get it at first. I was just like, that's kind of a weird name. But then I realized, I was like, oh yeah, Zeppelin 5, like the 5th Zeppelin album that didn't happen.
It's so the number. I mean, you cracked the code on Zeppelin 5, but where I'm coming to a hold on is Fungus 2. I'm curious where Fungus 1 came from.
Is there some band called Fungus that's like maybe like a deep cut, like sludge
probably.
band? Well,
who's credited on the album too is Black Pus. Do you know anything about them?
Yeah, Black Pus is Brian Chippendale's solo project. That's the name he goes as a solo.
Oh, okay. I thought, I didn't know if Black Pus was separate from Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, Lightning Bolt is Brian Chippendale, and Brian. I know what's the other Brian's last name? There are 2 Brians, which I think is really funny. Brian Gibson. Yeah. That's Lightning Bolt is the 2 of them, and then Black Pus I believe is just Brian Chippendale on his own.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think now would probably be a good time to potentially take a quick break and come back to talking about Fungus 2 after we tell people how we want to fill our ad space.
Yeah, keep us money.
I think we want to offer this space to, if anyone's listening out there who is our friend, is even some random person who decided to listen to us talk about music. If you have anything you want promoted, we have this open space right here where we'll talk about some art you're doing maybe. If you're playing, give you a little shout out. If you're, whatever your projects are, we want to help promote you and let the world know about what you're all about.
Yeah. If you're making music, if you're making art, if you got an event coming up, you don't have to pay us. That was a joke. That was my joke. If you want to pay us, you can. But no, we'll do it for free. We just want to have stuff to, as they say, like hype up,
But also,
we'll do that for
if you are a snack delivery service of any sort, or one of those cooking things,
or
a clothing one,
a book,
those
ebook
ones,
company, or what's that record company? What's that one that sends you vinyl if you like click? I like these 4 records, and then they send you.
We can't say their.
And then
don't say their names. Don't say.
No.
Don't say.
But it's like I like these 4 records. Okay, we don't care. We're gonna send you Vampire Weekend because that's as
Yeah. Well, let us know. Well, but you guys, you're the ones who have to give us money.
Yeah.
If you want us to give your business name, give us a little bit.
We'll talk about the passion, but you got to give us that cheddar cheese.
We need just a little bit. Just a little bit.
A little Fontina.
Oh, what's that popping up on your screen there? It's hot new singles in your area.
Oh, click on the link. NSFW.
I think to start it off for sure today, the single I'm most excited about, I don't know I haven't actually heard your full thoughts on it yet, but I know you listened to it at least.
I don't think you'll like it.
The Car Seat Headrest single, Can't Cool Me Down, their album, something about a door. I can't remember the name. It's like Opening a Door. It comes out on May 1st, but Car Seat Headrest, Can't Cool Me Down. Gosh darn, do I like this song.
Really? I was not expecting that. I know you told me your first reactions, and I was like, yeah, like I think it's a catchy tune. The more I listen to it, the more I don't know. It's real sparse and not in a kind of interesting way. It almost kind of has a sound to me that's like it's like a demo or something. Like
that, but that to me is such a big appeal to Car Seat Headrest to me is, yes, this is a very clean and produced song, but something about it still feels like Will Toledo just made this in his bedroom, and that's what's so cool about Car Seat Headrest is this song could be really, I don't know, I like it how it is, but I guess in a sense I see where you're coming from, but I think what Will Toledo does really well is he has a simple sound that is just built up so immensely. Like what I love about the song is actually, when I saw it live, it was a much different song, but with the recorded version, I just I think it builds up so well, and by the last chorus, I'm just yelling along with it. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from in the sense where the song does feel sparse, and it does have these like empty bits. But I think that is kind of Car Seat Headrest at its finest. Is you know, Will Toledo now doesn't like to think of them as so much of his solo project, Car Seat Headrest, anymore, but it's grown much more into a band, and the drummer Andrew has actually played a big part into this single. I guess he comes from like an electronic music background and stuff like that, so the whole album is gonna have more drum driven and kind of like dancey sort of vibes, which I think show in this song as they're moving kind of towards this more dance style music, which I'm really excited to hear. And I always find with singles too that the first single, sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. But as more singles come out and the album kind of falls into context and you really understand what they're going for, it just really fleshes out, and the album just shows itself as the singles come, and you're not just listening to this one new song, but you're starting to see this idea that the artist wants to portray. And I love Car Seat Headrest, and the past albums have been a lot of re-recordings of old songs, and some new tracks on 2016's Teens of Denial, but the Twin Fantasy of 2018 was a re-recording of their first album. So this is really the first new Car Seat Headrest we're hearing in a while, and
yeah, I'm really. Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to hear the full album. I guess I'm just not sold on this one single, but I am still very optimistic about hearing the album, because I don't know, I just think about Teens of Denial and Teens of Style. Like, those two albums are both like, they're rough, like sounding, like they have like that lo-fi sound, but like the more I listen to, I have Teens of Denial on vinyl, and like the more I listen to that album, it's so intricate. Like all the different, like they're deceptive, because at first they just sound like, you're like, oh, it's just like guitar indie rock, but like you listen to like the vocals and the way he approaches like how many different vocal lines he puts in songs and how many different melodies he like crams into songs, and they're like so like maximalist and like really really interesting. And I guess this song just particularly subverted my expectation of what I thought like Car Seat Headrest approaching electronic music would sound like. I guess this kind of reminds me a little more of very very early Car Seat Headrest, like some of his Bandcamp stuff that I've listened to and I've liked, but is also very much more minimal. I was expecting, like, I heard like electric Car Seat Headrest, and I was expecting him to do something like sort of like dense and like maximal, kind of almost like sort of Remain in Light or something like that, like something like Sound of Silver, like these songs that are like really compositionally dense, and have like lots of texture to them, like his guitar-based sort of band-based songs do. But I'm down to see what the next single is, down to see what the album sounds like. I'm sure it's not all gonna be sparse like this one song, but I guess we'll see. I think it's a very cool change of pace. I do think that it's this might be my last album that I will allow for this trend. I think that it's become a trend of the sort of like indie artist goes electronic has kind of been a thing, it seems like, the past year or two or three. And I think that they usually end up making good stuff, but I also feel like it's like, I don't know, there's a lot of electronic music, and it's like, it doesn't have to be rock music or electronic music. It can definitely be a mix of the two. I think some of the best albums, some of my favorite albums, are a really weird synthesis of all of that, like Remain in Light, like Sound of Silver. Like, I wouldn't call Remain in Light a purely electronic album. I wouldn't call Sound of Silver a purely electronic album. They're definitely dance albums. But, like, I don't know. I guess this isn't a song that I could see myself dancing to. I guess we'll see what comes next.
I disagree.
I don't think it has the right groove. I think it's a little too straightforward with its groove and with its drum pacing. I guess I like something that's a little more funk inflected, you know? I'm thinking like Houses in Motion.
Yeah, I think this album, I think once you see this whole album, it's gonna be a lot different from the single, because I don't think it's Car Seat Headrest going electronic. Because when I saw this song live, it rocks hard. I saw the song before it was released as a single, and I was so excited for this single to come out. It's definitely a lot different than the live song I saw, but I'm still really digging it nonetheless. But when they play it live, like if they're coming around you on this new tour for this album, I can't recommend it enough. They're just phenomenal live. They've been touring for a long time, and the band chemistry is just unreal, and they just really know how to put on a live show and just really take you away. And I this could just be because they're one of my favorite bands, and I'm just a huge Car Seat Headrest fan. They're definitely in my top 5. It was my most listened to artists last year, I think, but I can't stress enough how great they are live, and they're coming to Portland in May, and I'm just so excited. A lot of good stuff coming to Portland and in the area that I'm super pumped to see.
Was he wearing a mask when you saw him live?
I don't know if I told you this story. He wasn't wearing the mask when I saw him live, but I don't know. The mask does make me think of this story. But I was gonna go see them live. Not Car Seat Headrest, but in there's a side project of Car Seat Headrest, One Trait Danger, which is mostly headed by the drummer Andrew, and he makes kind of rap songs. I guess when they're on tour, he just messes around and music programs, making beats and stuff, and it's this kind of rap project. It's funny.
His blurb on the Car Seat Headrest website about making this album, he basically says like him and Andrew spearheaded the production of this. It's interesting to see. He's like, the songs contain elements of EDM, hip hop, futurism, doo-wop, soul, and of course rock and roll. And he's talking about how that One Trait Danger, that project with Andrew, was like a catalyst for how they approached this album. So it'll be interesting to see like what the direction is. It'll be interesting to see how the hip hop comes into play. I think if it's mostly an instrumental like approach, I'm totally down for that. I don't really know if I want to hear Will Toledo rap.
I don't think you will.
I do.
He doesn't rap in One Trait Danger. I think he's more there as a hype man, kind of. But I think the most Will Toledo rapping we get is him just kind of reading his monologues, because that's
he does that.
That's classic.
Songs. That's cool. I like that.
That's that's classic Will Toledo. A 20-minute song with another with a little monologue in the middle of it. Yeah. Another single I wanted to bring up, I'm pretty sure you listened to this one, is Wunderbar. This is their 3rd single they have released for their upcoming album. I don't know when the title of it comes out sometime in March, but the song is Montage Music, and I'm super excited for this album from Wunderbar, because these 3 singles, they're just a fun band. They're not like any new crazy sound, but they're just a fun band to listen to. And I I've enjoyed these singles. Have you listened to them?
Yeah, I gave a listen to those 3 songs that they have. Is the album gonna be called Petty Crime, or is that the first two?
Those are the single.
Oh,
It's
I see.
yeah,
I
those are.
listened to there's like a 3 song thing called Montage Music that has
Yeah,
Montage Music burned off and Petty Crime on it. Oh, I see. Okay, so they're like
those are
compiling
singles.
as they
Yeah,
release. They're compiling.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I listened to those 3 songs and I got this like really cool. I really liked it. This like almost sort of a new age or like a new wave band kind of vibe. I guess I haven't been keeping up with Wunderbar's latest releases because I listened to a couple songs off Antics and a couple songs off Gawk that I really liked, but that was probably back like sophomore year of college. I just kind of stumbled upon their song Chop, which I really like, and they have a song Holy Toledo and Greenland,
Yeah.
which are off their first 2 albums, and those are much more sort of just like a kind of quirky garage rock kind of vibe, sort of like that kind of new garage sound. But these 3 songs, they have a much slicker sound, not in a bad way, but like they're much chirpier and much cheerier, and they remind me a lot of like kind of jangle pop, new wave, kind of 80s, like early 80s bands. Um, and I thought they were really cool songs. Petty Crimes has like a really, really cool, really pretty like acoustic guitar riff in it.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
you got to check out their I think it's their most recent album, but Smell Smoke is a lot more in line with these singles that they've been releasing. And
okay.
it's my favorite of the Wunderbar albums. It's the one I'm most familiar with, but yeah, the tracks on Smell Smoke are just awesome. Acetone, the opener, is a real banger. But I got to see them in Portsmouth at 3S Art Space, and they're another band that puts on a really fun live show. They're going on tour for this album, so if you can catch them, definitely check that out. I've been overwhelmed recently, actually, by kind of the amount of shows that have been announced in my area that I'm getting really excited to see.
Dude,
There's,
it's that Portland buzz.
yeah, man, even Portsmouth, New Hampshire, this coming Sunday, there's a punk band called Control Top. They're on Get Better Records, which is the same label as. Do you remember the band Empath? I think I showed you them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're on that label, and yeah, Control Top. They're gonna be in Portsmouth this coming weekend, and I've been really excited to check out that show. Um, but yeah, I mean, in this little Maine seacoast area, I'm close to Boston, Portland, and even Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Occasionally get some cool stuff. Mount Erie is gonna be in Portsmouth, which I'm excited, and it's also going to be probably a pretty emotional experience.
Yeah,
But
I've heard that he does really sort of like real abstract live sets.
mm,
Like he doesn't just straight up like he doesn't just play his songs. He does like some real cool kind of like sets. Or at least I saw him perform in a museum, and he did this like real cool sort of like very interpretive thing. I don't know. It was interesting. I saw a snippet of it.
yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
um Before we really I mean, I don't know if you have any more shows or anything you want to talk about, but before we drift out of hot singles in our area, did you have any singles you wanted to bring up before moving on?
Well, it's not technically new, which is sort of the problem, but it's the first time that it's been on Spotify. A band that I've gotten into uh, in the past couple of months through other artists that I like. The single is by the band Polvo, which is a band from the 90s. And it's just 2 of their songs, The Chameleon and Tiara Fetish. Honestly, the songs aren't all that great. Tiara Fetish is pretty good, but Chameleon's real short. But I think it's really cool because Polvo lately they've just been getting all of their early records repressed and reissued. They're on Merge Records, and they're just a band that like I've kind of really been charmed by and then kind of fallen in love with because they have a sound kind of similar, kind of like halfway between Sonic Youth and like Unwound. like a sort of interesting kind of post-punk meets noise rock meets like weird tunings and like weird riffs and like very kind of like strange overlapping like different things going on, but in a way that like the songs are very cool. And I've really fallen in love, especially with their debut album, which is called Core Crane Secret, that I got a couple weeks ago when they they reissued it, and I saw it in a record store, and I was like, hell yeah. But they're a really cool band. I think that I don't know a ton about them. I don't know where they're from or when they like started or when they broke up, but they have some stuff that's been released in the past couple of years. I think they got back together. It looks like in maybe 2009, I want to say. But their 90s run of stuff is really cool, and just like kind of, I would compare them most to Sonic Youth, kind of like an interesting, jagged sort of noise rock kind of from weird tunings. And they have this one single that just got put on Spotify for the first time, but it's originally, I believe, from like, I want to say 92 or 93. And they're just a band that I'd recommend to anybody, especially if you like, you know, you're into like 90s alternative stuff, if you're into 80s alternative stuff. Polvo is pretty sweet band.
Sweet. I'll have to check them out. Polvo?
Yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. I guess a quick mention, Stephen Malkmus released another single. His album comes out on Friday.
Dang, already? It seems like it was like not that long ago that I missed the single. I didn't even see it come out.
Yeah. Have you not seen there's an Instagram filter that makes your face Stephen Malkmus.
That's kind of weird.
It's really weird. It's really weird.
Shadow Band, Jan Man.
Yeah.
Dang, I need to listen to those. Well, what's your thoughts on them?
I've listened to Shanman a lot, and I really like it. I haven't listened to Shadow Band is the new one. I haven't listened to it a ton, but I like the first single a lot. It's very reminiscent of kind of Range Life sounding Pavement. It's Stephen Malkmus has described it as like a new folk kind of album, which I sort of see. It's like, you know, it's very acousticy and twangy kind of sounding.
Okay.
But I'm excited to hear the album. I like what Stephen Malkmus has put out solo. It's never been anything too amazing, but it's always something that's like kind of fun to listen to. Yeah. I really liked Grooves Denied.
That was a fun track. That was a fun record.
Yeah, it's one that, you know, every once in a while I'll go back to. But I'm interested to hear what this next Stephen Malkmus album holds. I think he's just a fun songwriter, and it'll be something that's just, you know, fun to listen to. But Shadow Band I don't really know too much about. I listened to it the day it came out, but didn't hook me as much as Shanman did. Yeah, but I think that's all the hot new singles in my area. Are there any other hot new singles in your area, Dylan?
Not that I know of at the moment. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we'll have to close out of this pop-up for now.
Delete all the viruses off our computer.
And I wanted to bring it back to Fungus too, because we're getting pretty close to wrapping up here. Wanted to bring it back to Fungus too. Our main question here is not a rating system, but rather it's will you or won't you listen to it again? And personally, I will listen to this album again, but it's not one that has hooked me a ton. It's not one that has really knocked my socks off, but it's just something that I'm just intrigued to listen to more and to get deeper into it, and to I don't know, just to explore kind of what the story of this album is. It's it's something. It's a sound I don't normally listen to. It's something. Um, some just yeah, I don't know. It's something that like it lets out a lot of like anger and rage as you listen to it, and like you said earlier, it's like a full. If it can give you a headache, or it can give you it's a full body experience for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'd recommend this album to if people who are listening to this are more fans of Lightning Bolt, I think they will like Fungus too. But if they're hoping for a Ty album and they listen to Wasted Shirt, they're gonna be really disappointed because this is not a Ty album that I have ever heard before. A couple songs occasionally branch off into some Thai sounds and some Thai solos. You can hear his influence littered throughout, but this is not your classic Thai album. This is definitely a lightning album. Dylan, are you going to listen to this one again or
Um.
not?
Uh. It's an album that I think if I do listen to it again, it's gonna be after quite a bit of time away. At my current moment, it doesn't really fit into what I've been listening to and what I want to listen to. So I can't really say in the next couple weeks to months I'll be listening to it much, but it kind of has this quality to it where I feel like I sway and my moods change and what I listen to changes in these sort of like maybe like 3 or 4 month cycles. And it could be that the next cycle gets me into more aggressive, loud music. Maybe I get back into Lightning Bolt some more. I haven't listened to them in a while. I haven't caught up with some of their newer songs. So maybe I listen to something and I get into it, or I listen to some like, noise rock and I start getting into that. And I could kind of see myself coming back around on this album, just not at the current moment. I think if my listening habits stay steady, I don't think I'll be listening to it very much, if at all, in the next couple of weeks to months. But it's not something that I'm going to say I'd emphatically never listen to again because, I mean, it's Ty Segall and Brian Chippendale. Like, I put that in the back pocket for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting album for sure. But yeah, it's not your everyday Ty. And to close things off, what are you keeping your eyes on next time that we should talk about? I know, like I said, Stephen Malcolmus's new album comes out Friday. We could talk about that for next time. Do you have any albums that you're really feeling deserve one of our strange conversations?
Oh, man. I feel like I keep thinking, I keep seeing things that are going to come out, and then I just totally forget when it comes time
Yeah.
to talk about them. Yeah, that Stephen Malkmus album, especially if that comes out, you said Friday.
Yeah.
I'd be very interested in doing a dive into that because I do very much like Stephen Malkmus's. Um, I've heard a couple of his stuff with the Jicks lately through my work's Pandora station. They play a lot of the Jicks on the whatchamacallit, the Pavement radio station. And I've come to really like and respect the Jick stuff. Before I think I was more dismissive because I was like, like, it's it's not Pavement. But now I'm like, hey, this is kind of cool.
Yeah,
And
they're
so
fun.
yeah, and I really liked Groove Denied. I thought it was a really fun, interesting like approach, and I thought the songs were, especially I like Rush and the Acid Frat, and I remember there was one other one that I liked a lot. So I'd be very down to take a deep dive into that one. Um, I'm looking at what's coming out, or at least what's been announced that's coming out. Uh, I don't know. There's
Yeah, I think
not.
for now.
Oh, we should totally do Morrissey's upcoming album. Oh God.
We could do a special Morrissey roast,
Yeah.
but I don't know if we need to give that man any more publicity than
Oh,
he's already
dude.
given.
I I actually, this is kind of gonna sound surprising. I don't want to talk about this album mostly because I don't haven't kept up with Pearl Jam at all. I do secretly like Pearl Jam. It is actually a band that I respect quite a lot and do really like quite a lot of their music. Not their stuff lately, especially not in the past decade, but actually, and here's a sort of embarrassing fact, their last single that just got released, I like it, but it is not a Pearl Jam song. It is so blatantly trying to be a Talking Heads song, and it almost does a good job, to the point where I'm like, this is actually kind of an interesting and kind of a fun, like, dancey song, but the fact that it's Pearl Jam just throws my head for a whirlwind. Like, it literally does sound like it could be something off of an earlier Talking Heads record. It's very strange. I'd recommend you give it a listen just to, like, hear it.
I don't know, man.
He even sounds
It's
like David.
tall.
It's weird.
It's tall order.
It's strange. It's strange.
All right, but I think for now, let's say we're talking about Stephen Malkmus's new album, which comes out this Friday, March 6th. And do you have the title on that one?
I don't think it doesn't say on Spotify. Maybe.
I think it's called, I want to say Stephen Malkmus's new album is called Strange Techniques, coming out March 6th, I believe.
Could be.
Oh, whatever. Google Stephen Malkmus. You'll find it. It'll be in one of your feeds somewhere.
Traditional Techniques.
Traditional Techniques by Stephen Malkmus. There it is.
Yeah, there we go.
But yeah.
There's a new hasn't the date that it's coming out, I don't think hasn't been announced yet, but there's a new there's going to be a new April 10th, a new Strokes album. Let's hedge our bets now. Do we think the Strokes still have it in them to make a good record?
I don't know. I don't really care.
I think they've gone through way too much and are way too old at this point to make a good record. But yes, I don't know. Maybe that's too harsh.
A lot more interesting stuff happening out there than the Strokes.
Yeah, I agree.
But for now, we're thinking next time we're going to talk about Stephen Malkmus.
But I want you to listen to it hasn't come out yet, but that band Facts. Their album comes out on I don't know, I think March 20th or something like that. I saw them post on Instagram about it. It's like March 20-ish, around then. Listen, speaking of hot new singles, I didn't even know. I'm bad, Dylan. I haven't been keeping track. They released another single. They had one single out called Teenage Hive. That's a really cool song. But they just released another one called Casual Indifference. And I haven't given it a listen yet, so I can't say anything about it. But I really liked Teenage Hive, and the band's other stuff that I listen to is really cool. It's sort of like post-punk meets like dance music meets like kind of like shoegaze. It's very, very interesting, very atmospheric, very kind of very cool sound, and I'm very excited to see what their record sounds like. I'm trying to find what it's called.
We could definitely say that'll be a future conversation for us, probably the episode after Steve Malkmus, because I can't think of anything coming out after that.
Ooh, their new album is going to be called Void Moments, which I think is a very fitting title for what their songs sound like.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear that for a future conversation. But I think for now we should wrap things up. We're about at that time that is a podcast length, I think.
Yeah.
So this has been Strange Conversations with your hosts, me, Austin Kennie.
And me, Dylan Bennett. And I, and me, and I, or me? I think you were wrong. You were right. With me.
With me.
With me and I.
With me and me, Dylan. I don't know. We're done with school. You don't need a grammar for podcast. Thank you for listening.
We don't need to talk good.
The education ain't too much what you need.
It don't impress me much.